Wow. I hope that you guys have heard the news already. And if you haven't, well, we're going to get to some of the major breaking news here today, Thursday. It is March 13th, 2025. Um, I so appreciate you guys joining in on the show on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 4 to 5 live. As I've said before, we hopefully will settle in here in 2025 and figure out a little bit more of a rhythm as far as if we keep it on Tuesdays and Thursdays, the live portion of this. But irregardless, it doesn't matter if you're more live. You can join the DPB show anytime on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, and X because it's cataloged up there. It's constantly there at the DPB show, and you can catch up with anything that you did miss. Once again, go out, like, subscribe, hit the man of the hour. Look at that, Keegan. Hey, good to have you jump in here today, Keegan. Let us know what you've uncovered today because that's what it's all about is the latest and greatest. I can't cover it all. I mean, it just your head's on a spindle because there's so much breaking every day in this news cycle that we now are part of, and we're not going backwards. I mean, we are the media now. The mainstream media, the propaganda media, has found its place. It's going to continue to attract certain people uh, who love to feast on what I call the mockingbird media, where they've already decided what the narrative is going to be. And of course, it's never going to be something that's beneficial to you and me. It's always beneficial to those people who have somewhat for at least a few decades have commanded the space of media. So, one of the things they definitely are not going to cover is this new no income tax for people that are making 150,000 or less. You talk about having a plan. This is why we have to sit back and just let Trump be Trump. There has never been a time in the history of this country, not to say we haven't had some pretty powerful voices in the helm of the presidency because we've had what, you know, 47, right? That's hence Trump's presidency is the 47th. So, uh, well, I guess we haven't technically had 47 presidents because some people like Trump have, well, I always get confused by this. Um, if you serve a, if you serve two consecutive terms, you keep the presidency as so you're the 46th president, or 46th president was Joe Biden. He has one term. If you happen to have a gap like Trump did between 45 and 47, you come back as the 47th. So if you serve two consecutive terms, you still hold the number. So I guess technically, there, that's, yeah, 47, Trump 47. And we're going to find out that Trump not only is the best of the best when it comes to negotiations, we can look at that Lincoln, we can look at JFK, Eisenhower. I mean, there were some Roosevelt, not only Teddy Roosevelt, but I think, Franklin Delano Roosevelt made some compelling arguments if you believed in what he was trying to achieve, which is basically what they moved towards here recently, socialism. That's what the Great New Deal or whatever the raw New Deal is, more like it. But yeah, no, it's something that you're not going to hear. That's the no more income tax. The mainstream media is going to, the propaganda media is going to avoid it like the plague. Why? Because they've got to continue to perpetuate this narrative that the country is falling apart under Trump, that we there's no way. And once again, 52 days in the office, in the helm, and if you can't sit back and evaluate what is currently happening in our country, and I'm not talking about the world, because President Trump is not the president of the world. He's the president of the USA. Hence the cheer that constantly resonates and resounds when Trump is in the room. USA, USA, because this is about the United States of America. No more income tax, tax on tips, taxing Social Security. It's going to continue to play itself out. And it is all part of this continuing resolution because ultimately, as we talked about on Tuesday, we still have a good number of Democrats who occupy, and hence I love the fact that they have a uh, Facebook page called uh, Occupy Democrats, or the 98% Occupy Democrats, because that's what it is. We still have to contend with them. They're not going away, and we're going to have to do workarounds in order to legislate these changes so that they're permanent. That it's going to take an act of Congress to get beyond to repeal these taxes, or to repeal taxes, but not only repeal taxes, but repeal all the legislation. A little tongue tied today. I'm going to get zoned in, dialed in. Ryan's not going to be with us today, which he's still feeling the effects of being under weather due to medications. Myself, I'm going to hopefully be here as many days that I can throughout the course of 2025, because I don't like to miss bringing, a fresh perspective, a different perspective on the geopolitical scene, also the local scene, what's happening locally. So I'm not going to try to miss, but it doesn't mean that there aren't those instances when I am not feeling up to it. Dad, not the best day yesterday, but I survived. I happened to have a little accident, where I was burning some leaves and kind of got a little too close to the fire. You know how that goes, and got a little blistering on my skin. So nothing that a trip to the prompt care couldn't take care of, with some wonderful medicine from the local pharmacy. And I'm back at it today, but yeah, it just gives you a whole new way of thinking about life when you have certain things like that happen to you. It's just that subtle reminder that we are all so fragile. And I'm not talking about fragile in the sense that sensitivity to the fact that we get our feelings hurt. Of course we do. That's what life's about. Um, we also get physically hurt. We get mentally hurt, and none of that. That's part of growing and living through the world that we live in, um, and understanding that other people are probably experiencing things that. Thank you, Kat. Cat's on. Kat just said praying for you. Thank you, Kat. I should have Kat jump on real quick and give some updates. But this no income tax, I want to make sure that we dial in on it for households under 150K. I don't know if you've heard about it. The Commerce Secretary had an interview with CBS, and I hope that you guys go out there and find it because it's very dynamic. And I'm going to cover a little bit of it where he just gives some great lines as far as what Trump is trying to accomplish, especially in light of what he inherited. I mean, we basically were at a point of no return, meaning bringing this economy back into a position where the benefit is the people and not the politics and the politicians and those people who have tried to rig the system for the new Green Deal, or the New World Order is the way I like to look at it, the Great Reset, because that's where we were destined to head. And if indeed Kamala Harris were to be the winner of that this past presidential election, that's where we would have continued to go, because the stage was set. They had orchestrated it so that, and as we're seeing through the waste, abuse, and fraud, that they had really positioned themselves. Now, The interesting thing about what Doge is uncovering throughout this this new agency, the Department of Governmental Efficiency. This is something that people have been talking about for a long time. And I know that you and I probably get tired of hearing about it. I sure do. And that's just not amongst the Democrats. It's both sides of the aisle because they both have had their time in office where they could bring about resolutions, a plan of making our federal government more streamlined, more efficient, more effective, more representative of who we are, more about putting money in our pockets, or at least letting us keep the money rather than putting it in our pocket. Just stop stealing it. Stop. That's, my libertarian friends say taxation is theft. In a lot of instances, it is, especially when you abuse those monies, those hard-earned monies of a taxpayer. That's kind of how we got to that position. But I think the interesting thing and the hypocrisy is we continue to find out day in, day out. It doesn't matter what the issue is. No matter what is brought up in any given day, the Democrats and a lot of Republicans are going to take the opposite side, the counter side to anything that Trump and his administration is doing, and they're moving at light speed, so it's hard to keep up with them. But I think this pretty much sums it up. Here are three prominent people in the Democrat Party. And if you were to listen to them today, they believe what Elon Musk is doing is unconstitutional, and that it takes an act of Congress in order to stop agencies in their place, to stop wasteful spending, to stop abusive spending, to stop fraud. That's how the Democrats have positioned themselves today. They think that Elon Musk is doing something unconstitutional. But here is those three pretenders, actors. You've got Nancy Pelosi, you've got Bernie Sanders, and Chuck Schumer. Let's hear them give it to us.
We cannot keep our promises on Medicare. We simply must make the cuts and waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicare so that the benefits and the premiums are untouched. We owe it to our seniors. We owe it to our country.
There is an enormous amount of waste and fraud and abuse in this government. When there is waste and fraud, you have an administration who should also be on top of that situation.
If we're going to eliminate the waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicare, it does mean we're going to cut some of that out. And when I hear my friend Dave Camp say you cannot cut money out of Medicare, you can't just get up there and say, we don't want to cut anything out of Medicare. We want to cut the bad stuff and keep the good stuff.
We cannot keep our
So, proof positive that obviously their stance has flip-flopped, right? Which is something that we've come to grow to learn about people in politics. Our representatives, they tend to flip-flop. And it's not about moving the country forward. Where we find ourselves right now, and I think this is the serious business that Commerce Secretary Lutnick has pointed out many times over. And he did that masterfully in this CBS interview. We have accumulated so much debt, $36 trillion in debt. And the cost of servicing that debt is about $2 trillion. And this is money that I don't even think we can understand. Hey there, Bob. It's good to see Berwin, Bob, watching DPB show. Always good to have you here, Bob. But we cannot even begin to realize how teetering we are as a country when you have deficit spending or you have deficits. You have to figure out where to come up with that money. And the way that they've magically done that, and it is kind of magic, is they've created by not only spending more money, but printing more money, which is the reason we have the hyperinflation. Whatever happened to transitory inflation? It went away. The same people who obviously are disputing the Doge are also disputing where we're at with our current economy. In fact, some people are saying that Trump inherited a great economy from Joe Biden. I mean, this is the disconnect that is going to be very hard to break through. But I think we're doing it, and that's why you continue to see the public or the outcry from the radical left, and you're going to continue to see the craziness of the Rena riots. Right now, those riots are focused on the whole Palestinian um, kill the Jews argument because they're trying to protest on campuses. They were in the Trump Tower today. Of course, most of those people who decided to enter the Trump Towers as a private business and disrupt the business at hand are going to find themselves or jailed and booked, and most of them will be released, but they will have to come back to a court date. Now, granted, it's in New York, so who knows where they go in the process of our judicial system. But all of these things have to be re-engineered and rethought out on how it is that we're going to build and make America great. Trump has a plan. I'm pretty certain that that plan is going to exercise itself out over the course of the next 50 days, which would put us back at the 100-day mark, which seems to be this magical point that people talk about. And it is important position to be in the first 100 days. I don't know how anybody could even begin to argue that Trump is at right now is light years ahead of where the Biden team was at. And Biden doesn't even, if you take a look at where he was at after 100 days, it's almost comical, because what did they achieve other than opening the border, shutting down the Keystone Pipeline, putting tens of thousands of people out of work, instantly going in and implementing a policy and legislation. Well, they didn't get to legislation. It was through executive orders where they went in and they started tinkering with the social engineering of our public school systems, because no more was it going to be about educating. It was truly experimental in what they were doing with what they would never admit they were doing, which was, you remember, CRT is actually a master's based class, so a graduate class. It was not being taught in high school or in junior high or in elementary. Then it became culturally relevant teaching. Then it became DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So all of these things were going on under the first 100 days of Biden, which is fascinating that, when we take a look back, that we know that, geez, I mean, in 52 days, what has Trump achieved? It is mind-boggling. I had to get the screen back up. Usually I have our good friend Ryan here to kind of run interference when I'm pulling screens up. Because when you do radio, it's all talk. And until we started adding this piece of visually being able to peek in as we're live, no longer do I have the bump music playing in and going in and out of breaks. That did make it a lot easier to continue to pull the information up. I am limited a little bit on the technology we have. It's fascinating because we're doing things that we never could have done back 3 years ago on the radio. This StreamYard platform that we use allows us to be live on multiple platforms. However, the sharing of different content is a little tough. So you have to just listen to me a little bit more rather than seeing. But I do want to make sure that today, as we are going forward and understanding this no more income tax through Secretary of Commerce Lutnick and the plan that Trump has, how does that really walk itself out? I think it takes a little bit of basic understanding of economics, but here is where that comes from. It's a Newsweek article, so imagine that, just put out today, and Lutnick goes back into explaining exactly how that will come about. And it's interesting because once you put the money back in the pockets of people, people say, wow, this gives us an opportunity to either save or to spend. If they spend and buy things like cars and houses, then of course interest rates are going to come down and inflation is going to be reduced. But Lutnick says that President Donald J. Trump's goal is, and this is in the Newsweek article, President Donald J. Trump's goal is to eliminate taxes for people earning less than $150,000 per year. Says Lutnick, I know that his goal is no tax for anybody making under $150,000 a year. That's what I'm working for. He said that the major tax cuts could be implemented without causing spiraling national debt through tackling overseas tax fraud. Now, this is something that's new on the scene, too, because outside of an internal revenue service, we are going to have an external revenue service. Wouldn't that be a novel idea that we go out and look at the monies that are flowing overseas when we are exporting the American way by contributing to so many different entities, countries, NGOs, with monies that we make sure that we're getting a return on our investment, that these monies are truly going to where they're supposed to be going, rather than finding their ways to the coffers of people who are nefarious in what they're doing with the money. So an external revenue service, the proposal to remove taxes for people earning less than $150,000 per year would impact the vast majority of Americans. In 2022, around 93% of Americans age 15 and over earn less than $150,000, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. The proposal would consequently massively reduce tax revenue generated from federal government and threaten a huge increase in national debt. Lutnick said on Wednesday that Trump's aim is to remove taxes from individuals earning less than $150,000 per year. He also outlined the president's other tax strategies, which include abolishing tax on tips, overtime, and Social Security, and implementing significant reductions to individual and corporate taxes. Lutnick said that the federal government would counteract massive U.S. tax cuts by implementing tariffs on foreign nations and curbing overseas tax evasion. He noted that many commercial ships sail under the flags of other nations, such as Liberia, to avoid U.S. taxation. All those ships are paying no tax. It's a tax scam, he said. He added that many U.S. companies hold their intellectual property in Ireland because of a favorable tax regime. It's probably the reason that Rosie O'Donnell went there too. Ireland has a $60 billion surplus because our companies dropped their IP there. Intellectual property, they pay Ireland the money, tax scam, he said. How about we end the tax scams? And he goes on. I encourage you to go out there. It's a quick little Google search. I put it up on my Facebook page. You can go and look at that. It's basically entitled that we finally have a real leader who is walking forward a plan with a team. It's just not President Trump. He has assembled probably one of the finest cabinets ever in the history of the United States of America. I can't recall there being a combination of people and personalities from all walks of life who really have come together with a common goal, which is to make America great again. I know that the MAGA movement gets battered in the liberal sphere of life. But once again, I don't even, I think that they have lost so much traction and are basically a non factor at this point that in order to recover, they're going to have to start doing things that show the American people, the working class people, the commoner of America, that they're truly interested in helping rather than hindering. If you guys keep up with J.B. Pritzker, he happens to be my governor here in Illinois. Uh, all he has done since January 20th on social media, everything he posts about, I have not seen, he maybe a handful of posts since January 20th, meaning the inauguration, of course, of President Trump and his first day in office, but maybe less than a handful of posts that J.B. Pritzker has put up on his social media have not mentioned Trump's name. Everything is about Trump. Trump this, Trump that, Trump's destroying his state. He never brings to the table any plan of how he's going to deal with this new golden age, because that's where we find ourselves. We are in the golden age of times. Trump announced it, professed it, mentioned it again in his address to the joint session of Congress. We're not going to back away. We're going to continue to fly like an eagle to the sea. You know what that's just how it's going to be. It's not going to change. I wanted to pull this article at greater length because I think it's critical that we understand what is on the plate, and I will give you the location of it. It's on rev.com. You can go to rev.com. Hey, I just have to quickly mention earlier the Nancy Pelosi, Bernie Sanders, and Chuck Schumer video was compliments of Maze Moore. I always want to make sure that when I pull videos off of X or Facebook or TikTok, that I am giving credit where credit's due. I've shared with you many times over the content providers that are out there right now in the world that we know of social media are doing amazing work. And, you know, I have to reflect because I'm old enough to know this. There were only 3 sources back when I was a small child that you got your news from. Good, bad, or indifferent. In fact, you didn't even know. You just were wholesome enough. I think we were at an age of our country where we believed the people that would get behind microphones like this or on TVs and would tell you what was happening in the news. They would be reporting the news. Unfortunately, even back then, now that we look back in the Wayback Machine, that wasn't always the case. They weren't always reporting the news. Sometimes they were creating the news and they were driving a political, ideological narrative to position themselves for this land that we live in right now, knowing that it's not going to be long as this thing is being de-engineered, deconstructed, which is so vital. And that's what this interview is about. Sorry about that. I must have hit the little cord here. Bear with me. I'll be back. There I am. But this is from rev.com. Rev.com is this interview with Secretary of Commerce, Lutnick. If you're wondering why I don't say his first name, it's because I drew a blank on Howard's name. It's Howard Lutnick. I don't know if you know who Howard Lutnick is. A lot of people will say he's just one of Trump's billionaire friends again. Well, you know, I'm certain that he is a billionaire. And unfortunately, he happened to become a billionaire over time because he was in investment banking. Many of you might know his story. If you don't, I encourage you to go out and look up Howard Lutnick, spelled Lutnick. Howard Lutnick, as the Commerce Secretary, like so many of other Trump's positions. You look at the energy secretary, you look at his secretary of transportation. I mean, the list goes on and on. The different personalities and the potential and the mind power that he has in his cabinet. I mean, it is fascinating. Chris Wright with energy, drill baby drill. This is also part of how we're going to get no tax on income with households under 150,000, because at the breakneck speed that we are traveling in energy, once again, Joe Biden decided to export or import all the energy in the new Green Deal. We are now back operating full speed ahead on generating enough fuel, enough energy right here in the United States that prices are going to come down exponentially, which is also going to contribute to the whole essence of no more income tax. But Howard Lutnick, getting back to Howard Lutnick at the Commerce Secretary, fascinating story. Go out and look him up. Howard Lutnick. He was the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald. I don't know if many of you know what Cantor Fitzgerald is, but Cantor Fitzgerald was an investment brokerage firm that happened to be on the top 100. I think they're at a floor 103 and up, 103 to 113, but they were the top floors of the World Trade Centers. And on 9/11, Howard lost pretty much most of the people in his company that were at work that day. Now there were plenty of employees that hadn't made their way to the World Trade Center that day for many reasons, illnesses. Some were traveling with his company. For the most part, though, his company was literally decimated. Human capital gone. And you can't even begin to fathom what it would be like to suddenly lose all of your operational people, the people who had the intellectual property themselves, the wherewithal to navigate your entire business in one day, one event, the loss of life and the loss of life he experienced in his company. You talk about a guy that's all in on making America great. It is definitely him. So anyhow, this interview on rev.com, Howard Lutnick is interviewing with CBS. Down here, he said something that was so fascinating, and I want to make sure that I share that before we end the show today. But he talks about when I ran in my business, when my biggest client in the world said something to me, you know what I said? Yes. I said yes right away. Think about it. The biggest trading partner in the whole world and he's referring to the question that's coming from this particular reporter, Nancy Cortez. But you ran a large financial company. You know how difficult it is for a business to plan for a long term, even the short term, when policies out of Washington are changing every day. And his response was, when I ran my business, when my biggest client in the world said something to me, you know what I said? Yes. I said yes right away. Think about it. The biggest trading partner in the whole world that is vital to Canada's existence says, I'm unhappy. And they respond negatively. You know why? Because for 20 years, 30 years, they've gotten away with it. It's like Ukraine. They came in. You imagine coming into this country, sitting in the Oval Office, having received $300 billion in aid from the U.S. and the military and NATO and all the rest, and the first words out of your mouth aren't thank you. Just say thank you. God knows, just say thank you. When the biggest client and the biggest trading partner, the most important counterparty you have who really, really matters to you, the first thing you do is show immeasurable respect. Say thank you. I want to work it out with you. I want you to be happy. And he's referring to the whole jostling or jousting between Canada and America. He goes on later in this interview at rev.com to kind of walk that out. But that wasn't what I wanted to share. It was something that just caught my eye. But you got to go and look at this interview. It lasts about 28 minutes. But there's a part in here that is really impactful. And he talks about the debt, and he talks about how we got to be where we're at and how it is we're going to recover from it, because he says that Trump has walked this out, and this is what it is. She says, but it sounds like this is Nancy Cordes from CBS, but it sounds like you're saying trust us. And are you worried that at some point Americans are going to feel like there's a bunch of billionaires in Washington who are playing Russian roulette with our retirement? Howard Lutnick's answer: the 2 trillion deficits don't bother you at all. How could you ask me while we're running a 2 trillion deficit and not care? You're destroying the people who have run this country before, are destroying the future of my children and my children's children. We have a 36 trillion deficit, and we used to run deficits of 400 billion. Now 2 trillion. 400 billion and 2 trillion is definitely a big difference. Now 2 trillion, everybody like, who cares? I tell you who cares. Donald Trump cares. And when we balance the budget, you know what that means. That means our deficits stop, interest rates come smashing down. His goal is to have external revenue, which we talked about just a minute ago. And the way I think about it, we all are so used to paying taxes. Isn't that the truth? We just have become to accept taxation on everything we do, everything we consume, the services, the products. We don't even think about it anymore. But what happens when we start eliminating a lot of that? And suddenly those dollars are back in our pockets and rather are not flowing out. The way I think about it, we are so used to paying taxes, we have the Stockholm syndrome. Don't stop the Internal Revenue Service, God forbid. How about this? The rest of the world leans on our economy and breathes off of our economy. And it is just fascinating. He said, not only is our economy 29 trillion GDP, meaning gross domestic product, that's what we're bringing in a year, even though we have a $36 trillion deficit, we're bringing in 29 trillion, 2 trillion. Interest alone is going out. The math just doesn't math. We are the buyer of everybody's stuff. We buy everybody's stuff. So who is more important? The people who sell stuff or the people who buy stuff? Of course, it's the people who buy. So we are the buyer of everybody's commodities, products, goods, and services. Everything comes from us. Let them pay a membership fee. I love that. We all understand that model. Let them pay, don't we? All of us have had a gym membership. All of us had a Sam's Club membership. We understand it is time that the world starts to basically reciprocate the goodwill of the United States of America. For way too long have we continued to operate without receiving any of that money back. Everybody benefited except the United States of America. We understand that model. Let them pay. How about we, you and I, and every single person we know pay less? How about no tax on tips? How about no tax on overtime? How about no tax on Social Security? How about all those things? These are the kind of thoughts that will change America. I know what his goal is, and he's speaking of Donald J. Trump. No tax for anybody who makes less than $150,000 a year. That's his goal. And that's what I am working for. And that's what so many people are working for. If you have an opportunity, and I have shared this out on my social media pages, rev.com, it is a great interview and talking about an financial intellectual economist, someone who has the ins and outs. And that's what it's going to take to get us out of this. It isn't going to be the senator, the U.S. senator like mine, Tammy Duckworth, who's out there flinging everything and anything against the wall, hoping it sticks to keep her constituents happy. And constituents, when I say constituents, unfortunately, we have hyper partisanized everything, meaning she's got a group of following of people who, no matter what she says, they just lap it up and go with it. But JB Pritzker being another one, when you are seeing some movement in the Democrat Party from people like Gavin Newsom and Tim Walz. I mean, believe it or not, the guy that was coined to be Kamala Harris's running mate is now speaking as if he's a moderate Democrat, which there's nothing further from the truth about that. They're all going to run to the center because they did such a despicable thing in trying to destroy this country. That day's over. As Trump said last week on last Tuesday, we're back, and we are back. This is proof. Rev, go out, look at my social media on X. So much more to share with you that I do want to get to something a little bit off the cuff that it's a little lighter moment. It kind of shows you the essence of where we are and where we've grown to. And this is a young girl, and this is a TikTok video, but she's got an interesting little take on things, and she brings her grandfather in to kind of to make this whole thing happen. And here she is, delightful as it can be. So let's run with this real quick.
Okay, thank you for choosing me to be in the drawing for the 2025 Democratic Great Scholars Awards. I have my papa with me today. Introduce yourself.
I'm Larry.
And my papa, I've chosen my papa because he showed me how great the Democratic Party really has been. When Joe Biden won president, my papa called me so excited because Joe had won and the Democratic Party was now in office. This year, Trump has won, and my papa is very sad for this upcoming. Papa, you can't laugh.
I can't help it.
It's fine. I can just cut that off. I can cut that part
How
off.
come you didn't go with the other route?
Because this was the scholarship that they had. It's the only one they had to offer.
And I gotta be a Democrat?
Yes. It's fine. We can just cut that part out.
Yeah, you cut it out.
Okay.
Hey, it was Trump, Lord, I'm happy.
I know, but you just act like you weren't. So when Trump won this year, he was very sad for this upcoming election. But that is okay. And my papa is going to share with you today some of the great things that the Democratic Party has done. Papa!
I can't do it. I'm sorry, hon. I'll have to give you the $10,000.
That says it all. That says it all. What a great video. I think that I put that one up. If I haven't put it up, I know it's on my X account. Yes, it is. That's where I just grabbed it from. I'm going to try to share that over to Facebook and Truth Social. You can find that video there, but what a great video, because it does bring some levity to this. And I guess if I were to try to bring this thing full circle for today's show, it's this. People, real people, common sense people. My wife, Mrs. Producer, constantly reminds me of this. You and others like you're the ones out there. I love it when they want to point out all of the things that have gone wrong, because once again, they didn't go wrong under Trump. They went wrong under Biden. The price of eggs is because of Biden and his cabinet and the decisions they made to basically gall 150 million gall. Did I say that right, Mrs. Producer? Gall kill 150 million chickens, laying chickens, meaning eggs are produced by these chickens that they decided to eliminate because of the bird flu. That's, of course, going to cut down on the supply of eggs. Now, one thing that didn't cut down on, and I found this fascinating because I was at Sam's Club recently, is chickens. Go and get yourself a broasted chicken, eat more chicken. I mean, you talk about chicken galore for $4.98, less than the price of a dozen eggs right now. You can get a broasted chicken. But what I want to kind of bring home is if we get to the point where this young lady who was doing this, Biden administration had chickens galled, not Canada or Mexico. Bird flu doesn't cross borders. Thank you, Mrs. Producer. 150,000, 93% of us, and I include myself in there. I mean, that's just life. That's where we live. That's the wheelhouse. That's the meat of where most of us operate and exist. We feed our families. We go on vacation. We own homes. We pay our medical bills. We exist. We pay our electrical bills, all of our household bills. That's where we're at. 93% of people exist. So the Howard Lutnicks, bless his heart, everyone has the same opportunity. If you trace back any of these billionaires' lives, most of you would never sacrifice. I know I wouldn't, to get to where they've gotten. And so I'm not going to begrudge somebody for accumulating wealth. I'm going to celebrate that as something that all of us could do if you aspire to do it. Now, granted, there's plenty of corruption. Don't get me wrong. I used to quote this, and I don't remember who. I think it was one of the Rockefellers said it, and it was so true. And I think they were talking to themselves about themselves. Show me a great fortune, and I'll show you a great crime, because they even know at times this world that they existed in is a corrupt world. But the better part of that is the 93% of the people out there, the common sense American, they don't, they're not corrupt. They're good people, good at heart, faith-going people, church-going people, Little League going people, movie going people, mall going people, even though I know that most of what happens anymore is not at a mall. There are still malls. I believe that there's going to be an advent and comeback of shopping centers in a roundabout way. It's not going to look like shopping centers and malls of the past, but they are going to be revitalized, more community oriented around what they provide in goods and services. But it is where the rubber meets the road. That is who is impacted by everything that's going on right now. And that's who's going to continue to be impacted. And that's who's reaching out. And that's where the change comes. That's what led to Trump being in office. 77 million, give or take a few 100,000 votes, put President Donald J. Trump in Washington, D.C. with the sole purpose of making America great again. And I can't think of anything better to make America great again than to involve the people by enriching the people. We've heard many, many people who have occupied political offices talk about building a stronger middle class. I think you're going to see that 93% are impacted by the legislation of days gone by. It is time to reset. It is truly time to to explore opportunities to do things here in this country that we've never done before. It's the only way we're going to get out of the rut that we have been in, and we're seeing that. I mean, 52 days in office, and we're seeing energy coming down. We're seeing goods and services. We're seeing things rechecked. I think a lot of it has to do with the projection of what the future holds. Hence, when they trade in futures and options. Futures on energy are telling us that the best is yet to come. Our best days are ahead of us because we are not restricting that. We're not shutting that down. We're bringing that back. And that's so important. Hey, I couldn't end the show today without talking a little bit about Dan Bongino. I know many of you who tune into the DPB show know that I got, I basically started out with Rush. I was mesmerized at times by Rush Limbaugh and his ability to captivate an audience and to be able to talk around so many things that impact everyday Americans' lives, that it became something that I almost, didn't even think about. It was just a part of my day. And at that time, it wasn't podcast. Rush was on radio. It was radio. If you wanted to pick up Rush, it was radio. He had a small, short stint in television. It didn't last. As the old saying goes, Rush didn't have he had a face for radio and not a face for television. So Rush was the godfather, the originator of conservative talk radio. When Rush passed away, I had already been listening to Dan Bongino, and my brother Mark actually was the one that said, "Hey, you got to listen to this guy. He's pretty dynamic. He's kind of hardcore because he's a New Yorker. He's a New York cop. He was in the Secret Service. He's definitely somebody that you would enjoy listening to because he's very direct. He's fact-based, evidence-based, spreadsheet-based. Everything is, he just wants to hear the facts. He doesn't get caught up in the personalities. I don't either. I try to love people where they're at the moment that God brings them into my life. And that's how, I want to walk forward. But Dan has been a big part of my life for the last few years. And now, as many of you know, and if you don't know, Dan Bongino is moving on. Tomorrow is his last show. He left it up to his staff to basically put together the content for the show. Dan has nothing to do with it because the guy on Monday's waking up as the deputy director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And if ever there was a true story or a story that you should really look into, in his 10 years of doing what I'm doing right here behind this microphone as the DPB show, Dan was able to build upon talk radio, but also podcasting, a company that is formidable. He's walking away from a multi-million-dollar business to assume a position that pays him just a little under $250,000 or a little over $250,000. I don't have the exact schedule or salary schedule of the deputy director of the FBI, but I know that it's about that $250,000. So he's walking away from his multi-million-dollar position to do what he believes he was called to do. And I think we're all called to do that, to serve, to be a witness, to be part of making this world a better place to live in. And so Dan's having his last show tomorrow for a while. Who knows? Heck, he could be back in a year. He could be back. He could never be back. But tune into Dan Bongino tomorrow, whether you catch him on his podcast, which starts at, if you're here in the central time zone, that would start at 10 a.m. If you're on the Eastern time zone, 11. And of course, as you move out to the mountain and time zone in the Pacific, it gets later. But tune into Dan for his hour-long podcast, but then he does 3 hours on radio in so many different markets from the East Coast to the West Coast. pick up Dan's show. I think you'll be better for it. Dan is going to be, if Dan, well, what am I to say, Dan Bongino? Dan's going to approach that position with the same vigor, the same intensity, the same passion that he did his show, the Bongino Show, the Dan Bongino Show. And if that's the case, we all better buckle in, because Dan's not going there, as he says, for cutesy time. Cutesy time is over. And Dan also lives by a set of rules. And he's passionate because he carries truly the spirit of Jesus Christ in his heart. Many times Dan has professed Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior on his podcast, on his radio show. He doesn't hold back. And yours truly, I don't hold back about that. I want to end every show that I have with giving glory where glory does, where there's only one place that glory is received, in my way of thinking. And that's by giving glory and praise to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So get out there, listen to Dan's show tomorrow. We are going to miss him, but many of us who are in this space are trying to pick up, similar when Rush passed away, we're trying to to juggle it. And if you look at the legacy that Dan Bongino is leaving in his own little Silver Lock company with his wife and with the other the other up and coming young talented people that he has built a bench with. It's fascinating, because that's what it's about. It's building people. It's bringing people into the light, rather than letting them sit there and be in the darkness. Carry your light into the darkness. Shine that light into all corners of the dark room and the darkness. Let it be known that you are a person that truly believes that it's not about you. It's about him. It's about living life here on this earth for Christ's sake, not for our own will, but God's will. What better place to stop? Go out to my social media, whether that's Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, or X. Like, subscribe, hit the like button, share it with friends. I'm going to continue. It's easier to do it when I have a guest, and it's easier to do it when I have Ryan in the second seat with the Ryan Mack Show. If you guys haven't seen the Ryan Mack Show, get out there. Today, I'm going to give a little plug because I happen to be wearing this wonderful sweatshirt here. It is We're Your Next Step. It is a pregnancy center right here in Central Illinois called Living Alternatives. Great organization. My wife and I have been supportive of Living Alternatives for many years. My hat, of course, comes from the Bailey Farms. So always a shout out to Darren Bailey. Darren is continuing to be out there with, if you talk about somebody that's put together over 3 years, this is a guy that never, did podcasting or radio, but he has such a passion and love for people. And that just exudes off of his body. And, and like Darren, myself, am I 100% DPB all the time? No, I stumble, fumble, and bumble, but there go I. But for the grace of God, God has showered me with so many things in life. One being my beautiful wife, Mrs. Producer, who I might not have a guest here today with me, and I might not have Ryan with me, but I always have Mrs. Producer behind the scenes, helping me to navigate the comment section. She does a great job. It pops it up in the screen. It gives me an opportunity to look straight into the camera to make sure that I'm connecting with you. But we've got a lot happening, and I look forward to coming back on Tuesday and Thursday next week. we are going to start to walk out some of our guests. We were looking at the list of people that we haven't had back on the show for a while. We're going to try to get them back into studio to get their take on where things are at in this new golden age, whether that be Darren Bailey, Kevin Ferris, even Kat Peterson, who was in the comments section a little earlier, Ty Smith, Tom DeVore. The list goes on and on. We have such great resources all around us. Lean into those and always give thanks and praise to the one that makes all this happen. And with that, that's what I would like to do. Dear eternal and gracious Father, we just thank you for this day. Thank you for the DPB show. Thank you for the ability to come and to witness and to share and to walk out some of the craziness that we are facing on a day in, day out basis. Lord, all of this truly is the world. And yes, it's important that we have one foot in and one foot out. Continue to guide us and lead us here on this earth. For as long as you will have us here, we want to be like you. We want to walk like you. We want to talk like you. We want to act like you. We want others to see you when they look at us. Lord, when we don't do that, I know you forgive us, but I know that we have to reach out to you and ask for that forgiveness, because in a twinkling of the eye, in a blink of the eye, you show us mercy. You show us grace. Let us also give that to other people that we encounter day in, day out. Let us be people of the light rather than people of the darkness. We pray all these things in the precious name of Jesus Christ. Amen. All right. We will be back on Tuesday. I love you. I know Ryan Mack, if he was here, he would be telling you he loves you. Don't forget Dan Bongino tomorrow. If there's anything else that you guys encounter or come up with or believe that we can do better here at the DPB show, believe me, I'm all ears. I know that I have a lot of sharpening yet to do to sharpen the saw, and I get that from you. And I know my friend Berwin Bob will always help me with that, keeps me humble. And others, so many of you help to keep me grounded with the DPB show. I thank you. Obviously couldn't do it without you, but I look forward to doing it again with you on Tuesday of next week from 4 to 5. Until then, I bid you farewell.